As we head into December, it's time for a TBR video. This is kind of a mix between a reading update and a TBR video because I'm in the middle of quite a few books right now that I think are probably going to take up the majority of December for me. So I'll talk about those books I'm in the middle of and then some of the books that I might get to by the end of this month or as we head into the beginning of January. If you want to see the books I've recently finished, I just made a video on my November wrap-up. You can check that out. Otherwise, let's go through the books I'm reading and the books that I'm going to be reading in December. First up, I am in my Sun Eater era. I am a little over halfway through Kingdoms of Death, which is the fourth book. This is getting brutal, which I had heard that this book makes things get a lot darker, and that is very true. This is a much darker book so far than the previous entries in the series. I'm still loving it though. Sun Eater is so fun, so good. I've already talked a couple of times on this channel about how much I loved Demon in White. I also loved Howling Dark. Howling Dark honestly was incredible. I just think Demon in White was more evenly incredible, whereas Howling Dark, it was really like the second half just took off. But anyway, Sun Eater is such a good series. This continues right in line with that. It's still incredible. Can't wait, but I'm also terrified about where this might be going. So hopefully in the next week or so, I will finish this out. And then I'm going to keep going. Once I finish Kingdoms of Death, I'm going to read Dregs of Empire, which is a novella. It's kind of long. It's pretty much a full-length short novel. And I think this takes place between Kingdoms of Death and the fifth book, Ashes of Man. So I will read this after Kingdoms of Death. That's probably going to be the last thing I read in the Sun Eater for this year, realistically, with the other books that I have going on in this stack. If for some reason I get through an extra book and I have more time, then of course I will continue on with book 5 in the Sun Eater series, Ashes of Man. Very excited. Again, I love Sun Eater. Excited to finish Kingdoms of Death and kind of get into this next phase. My hope is that I can get to Shadows Upon Time either by the end of January or February of next year so that I can complete this series and give my entire opinion on Sun Eater as a whole. I'm also reading The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. This is a collection of short stories that so far pretty much all of them have been incredible. Like this guy, he knows how to write concisely. Like he will get you invested in a story or a character within a couple of pages, within a couple of paragraphs. And he has this uncanny ability that he'll give you a 15-page short story, and at the end of it, you are choked up. He's done that to me multiple times through this, which is truly incredible. And I think good short fiction in general has that ability. And I haven't read short fiction in quite a while, which this book is making me think I need to correct that. So what I've been doing is I've been reading one short story from the Paper Menagerie per day, in addition to my other reading that I'm doing. And that has made this a very manageable thing to add on to the other books that I'm reading because it's like 15 to 30 pages maybe of this, and then I kind of resume with one or two of the other books that I'm normally reading. Either way, these short stories are great. They're mostly sci-fi, I would say, or kind of modern day literary with a sci-fi angle, but they're so good. I don't hear this talked about enough. I am loving this. He also wrote The Dandelion Dynasty, which has some popularity online now, and I'm very glad about that because Dandelion Dynasty was my favorite fantasy book of 2023, and it's criminal that I haven't continued with The Dandelion Dynasty since then. I'm hoping to read book 2 of that series next year in 2026, but in the meantime, I wanted to read some of Ken Liu, and I'm loving this short story collection. Another book that I'm in the middle of, forgot to put the cover back on it so that you all know what book I'm even talking about. I've been taking this book with me on the go, which is why I didn't have the dust jacket on. Actually, I think the dust jacket is supposed to protect it when you're on the go, but I like my dust jackets to look pristine, so if I take a hardcover out and about, I usually take off the dust jacket. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. As I said, I had originally wanted to read this in October, but I had a lot of other books and things going on, and so I didn't get to it. But I'm happy to be reading it now. I'm about a third of the way into it. I like it a lot. This is a very literary novel. This is kind of a story within a story within a story. It's about a woman who finds a manuscript from one of her ancestors, a priest who kind of writes down this journal after a man comes to him to confess and kind of tell his life story. And this man is a Blackfeet Indian, and he's kind of explaining everything he's gone through in his life in the 1800s. And there are maybe some supernatural things going on in relation to this man. And I won't say anything more than that, but it's really well done. And it's a little hard to follow at times, from the sense of you have to be paying attention so that you're kind of going through this Russian nesting doll of a story of like, okay, we're here, now we're here, now we're here. It's not that hard to follow, but it does take a little bit of mental triangulation. And I've heard some people struggle with this because they don't like the structure or the writing style. And I think that's understandable. This is not a book that's going to work for everyone. Stephen Graham Jones in general, in my experience, is a pretty divisive talent. Most people do seem to agree that he's talented, but not everybody likes the way he writes and the styles that he employs. So know that going into it. This may not be for you, but if you like Stephen Graham Jones, then I would guess that you'll like this. We'll see how I feel when I finish it, but it's great so far. And then the other book that I just started, I was trying to wait until I finished Buffalo Hunter, but I've been wanting to read Gormenghast for so long. I bought this hardcover 2 years ago, I think, and I told myself I'm going to read this back in 2023, and then I didn't. So I'm really happy to have this now. I hear a lot of good things about Gormenghast from the people who've read it, but not a lot of people actually are reading this, I don't think. It's a little bit dense, I will say. I'm like a couple chapters in. The writing style is very dense, very verbose, kind of flowery, but in a very capable way. It's a very poetic read. I love the prose and the writing style that Mervyn Peake is employing here. It's very artistic. And Mervyn Peake was an artist, and I think that's very evident in the way he writes. If you want to get lost in a dark, grimy, endless, sprawling castle city, Gormenghast is going to be for you, I think. But I'm very early into it, so I don't have a ton of thoughts other than that. But I'm really enjoying it, and again, because this is dense, I'm probably not going to fly through this. I think my goal, kind of like the short story collection, is to read a couple chapters a day, maybe, and then I'll kind of be reading some of those other books more quickly, like Sun Eater. Okay, so if I finish all of those before December, and I still have time to read more, I have a couple of other books lined up that I'm interested in reading. This is not a strict TBR. I don't know how many of these I may or may not get through, certainly not all of them, but I have a few shorter books that have caught my attention recently that I might try and knock out one or two of these, and then a few others, and I'll talk about those. But Clara of the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. He wrote Never Let Me Go, which is a novel that I really enjoyed. He's written a lot of famous novels. I mean, he won the Nobel Prize in literature at some point. So yeah, everybody I think knows about this guy. But I'm excited. I've heard, I don't know if it's Clara or Clara in the Sun. I've heard a lot of great things about this book. And because I loved Never Let Me Go, I think Ishiguro has this very simple yet poignant style of writing that really captures the essence of being human in the simplest of ways. And so I'm excited for this because I think this is going to do that in a little bit of a sci-fi setting. I think this is about a robot android who has some level of sentience, and it's the story told from this. I think she's kind of like a toy for a child, and it's from her perspective or its perspective. I don't really know, but I think that's kind of the conceit here. But that's one I want to get to. Another one about an android. I guess I'm in the mood for androids. Mockingbird by Walter Tevis. He's the author of Queen's Gambit, which I haven't read, but I'm aware of the TV show. I heard about this one from Ramel Broadcasting, and it caught my attention. I believe this is about an android who is serving kind of humanity in a future that is very bleak. Things kind of are terrible now, and this android does not have the ability to end its own life, even though it wants to. So this sounds a little depressing, but I like depressing books sometimes, and I've heard that this also has some like humanity and poignancy to it. I think much like Clara and the Sun, it explores what it means to be human and contrasts that experience of humanity through something like a sentient android, comparing that with the humanity of kind of this dystopia that this takes place in. So interested in that. Another super short novel, Kim Ji-young, born 1982. This is about a woman who starts having like this weird psychosis where she's speaking, I think, in the voices of like other women, both living and dead, and her husband tries to take her to like a psychiatrist to get help, and things kind of spiral. I think this is sort of like a thriller. It's also very literary, and I think this is really saying a lot about the experience of misogyny, particularly of women in South Korea in kind of recent decades. So I think this has a lot of important things to say culturally, socially, but also just sounds very intriguing. So I'd like to get this one, and it's really short. So I think I will be able to finish this before the end of the year. Brigands and Bread Knives by Travis Baldree. This is his third traditionally published cozy fantasy novel. I liked Legends and Lattes. I liked Bookshops and Bone Dust, and I think I'm going to like this. Honestly, the cover art is so cozy, so cute, very nice cover art. I like this a lot. I'm not like a huge cozy fantasy person. I tend to like the darker stuff for the most part, to be honest, but every once in a while, the mood strikes me. I think when it's snowy out, sitting by the fire, having like a little cozy palate cleanser between heavier Sun Eater books like Kingdoms of Death might be kind of nice, and I think this picks up with some characters from Bookshops and Bone Dust, which I liked, so I think I'm going to like this. Again, not my favorite of all time, but I'm interested to see what's going on in Baldree's cozy little fantasy world. And finally, again, I probably won't have time to get to this, but one of my favorite all-time series is Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb, and Fool's Errand is the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy, which is like the third series out of 5 different series within the overarching series. I've actually read this book. I loved it. It's devastating, but I never finished the Tawny Man trilogy. I kind of got sidetracked with other books, and I want to get back to it because I finished the Live Ship Traders trilogy earlier this year. Incredible. And so next year, my plan is to make my way through the Tawny Man trilogy. So I'm going to reread Fool's Errand and then move on to the subsequent 2 books in the trilogy as we get into kind of the first couple of months of next year. So excited about that. I'm always happy to be back in the Realm of the Elderlings. So there you have it. Those are the books that I'm currently reading and some of the books that I might read by the end of the year. Again, don't hold me to this. I'm terrible at sticking to TBRs, but I will finish some of these and I will be talking about them throughout the month. And as I do my wrap-up videos later in the year, I'll for sure let you know what I think. But it's some exciting stuff. I mean, between Sun Eater and Gormenghast, like, we have some contenders that could break into my all-time favorite fantasy lists. So if you want to hear more about these books and more ranking videos about my favorites of fantasy, sci-fi, horror, then go ahead and like the video, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff. I'm going to be trying to post more over here, and so I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment. Let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know what you're going to be reading in December. And yeah, happy reading. Thanks for watching.